Hi everybody, welcome to Christian Homestead. My name is Jared. I just recorded a video about Community of Christ. They recently put out several video messages on their YouTube channel, and they were put out on the 1st of November. And there's three in particular that had a really interesting message, and they all went together. Their messages had to do with an unexpected future and what to do when everything goes wrong, and how you have to take detours and pivot and use your imagination to reinvent yourself and stuff like that. This is their prophet president, Stacy D. Cram. If you missed that video, you should go watch that. It's pretty incredible from my point of view. So it was just like a lot of stuff that they were saying that seemed to be possibly preparing their membership for a big change. And I was speculating, could this be the time? Could something have happened to where now they've decided, yes, let's go ahead and unload the temple and the auditorium. We've looked at their budget for 2026, and the temple and auditorium are some of their biggest expenses by far. It costs a lot of money. And so it would probably really help them in the long term to get rid of those expenses. And so are they preparing for that? And are they preparing that part of their membership that would miss the temple and auditorium, or that would feel like they were defeated if the church had to sell those assets? So I made that video, and then afterwards I made another video about something else. And then I went to the church website. I wanted to see if the new Liahona was available, the December Liahona, because a lot of times you're able to access it, like a week or two before that month that the issue belongs to. And I was just looking at the artwork on the issues that are available. And then I saw this one from October, and it reminded me that our church may be preparing us for something big that has to do with properties. So we all know that the Kirtland Temple relatively recently came back to our church. We purchased it from Community of Christ. And when you, here's the video I did about it. It was about a month ago called Flourishing Includes Unprecedented Things. I wish more people had watched that video, but I'm going to do a review here. So when you look at that issue, the article that's written by one of the 15 is this one by Elder Rasband. And we're going to look at that in just a minute. Let me just show you a couple things. He includes all this imagery of the Kirtland Temple, tells a story about the Kirtland Temple and his ancestors, but just all this stuff about the Kirtland Temple. And then as you look through the rest of the issue, you have this one that has a picture of the Nauvoo Temple, which for a long time, the Nauvoo Temple was just a temple lot. It wasn't until President Hinckley's presidency that it was built. This is still, relative to the entire history of the church, this is still relatively new. The Nauvoo Temple. After that, you have, this Come Follow Me section has the Kirtland Temple. And some people would probably just say, well, it's because they're talking about the Kirtland Temple. Maybe. But let me just show you what Elder Rasband said. And then later on, here you have more artwork of the Kirtland Temple. Okay, so if Community of Christ, if they are preparing their membership for a big change, another big sale of property, is our church doing the same thing? Is that what this message had to do with? And before I get into it, one thing I noticed, it's interesting because this special set of videos, at least Stacy D. Cram's, had to do with Christmas. And this year, our church for some reason, still don't know why, instead of doing a live First Presidency Christmas devotional that you can actually attend, it's been pre-recorded. Don't know why yet. I don't know if there's some special reason or if it's just purely for practical reasons. I don't know. We recently had a state conference here in Independence, and we had we had Elder Teixeira that came, and he was pointing us to Christmas, and then after that to Easter, but he was wanting us to focus on this Christmas. So I don't know. I don't know if that has to do with any of what we're talking about here, but Christmas, Community of Christ, our church, transactions, transfers of property. This excerpt at the top says, the temple is central to the power and protection promised to the faithful before the second coming of the Lord Jesus Christ. There's a picture of the Kirtland Temple and Joseph Smith holding a coin. And Elder Rasband says, in May 1833, my fourth great-grandfather, Asahel Perry, if that's how it's pronounced, and some friends traveled from northern New York to Kirtland, Ohio. They weren't members of the newly restored church, but they wanted to meet the prophet Joseph Smith. They arrived just in time to attend the first council held to discuss the building of the Kirtland Temple. Okay. So he's telling a story about plans to build the Kirtland Temple. Just like there might be plans right now to purchase some of that property. After beginning the council, the prophet presented the business of building the temple. Then he called upon those present to express their feelings related to such a large undertaking. Such a large undertaking. Now, sorry, these are my highlights from the last time I talked about this in a video. But now I'm looking at this a little bit closer. Such a large undertaking. Most responded that the church was too poor to tackle such a task. They proposed construction of a smaller, less expensive building. During the ensuing discussion, Grandpa Perry and his friends huddled, took out their money and added it up. Did they have enough to pay for their return trip and contribute to the temple's construction? A few minutes later, my grandfather approached Joseph Smith, pulled out a $5 gold coin, and presented it to the prophet. Such a coin today would be worth hundreds of dollars. Joseph stood before the council and held up the coin. Then, speaking energetically, he said that, quote, the work had commenced, and the house of the Lord would be built according to the pattern presented, end quote, by the Lord Jesus Christ. I just have this highlight because we went to the actual source and read more of what was there. Okay, so they're talking about a big project, and there's people that have their reasons for not wanting to do it or to downsize it. They're thinking in worldly terms. But then you have some faithful people that are not even members of the church that offer their money. And that was the start of building the Kirtland Temple. Okay, continuing. The Perry family soon joined the church in Kirtland, received their temple blessings a few years later in the Nauvoo Temple, and later crossed the plains to Utah. By the time the Kirtland Temple was dedicated in 1836, it was too small to hold all the Latter-day Saints who wanted to attend its dedication. As the church grew, so did the numbers of saints who had to attend meetings outdoors. President James E. Faust, who served as my stake president when I was a young man, and as a mentor when I was called as a general authority in 2007, made this observation regarding the church's second temple. Quote, before the Nauvoo Temple was completed in 1846, the saints would meet outside, often near the temple, to hear Joseph and the other church leaders speak. Sometimes thousands attended those meetings, end quote. Sometimes even in inclement weather. Quote, as Elder George A. Smith observed in his humorous way, in the days of the prophet Joseph, the church flourished best out of doors, end quote. We are grateful that in our day, The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is flourishing outdoors, indoors, and throughout the world. That flourishing includes the construction of temples at an unprecedented pace. Quote, according to the pattern presented, end quote. A pattern that has always included blessings, consecration, faith, and sacrifice. So yes, we have an unprecedented number of temples that have been announced, and this may be all that he's referring to, possibly. There's probably some people that question, why do we need to spend all this money to build temples? You know, everyone within the church, there's going to be, you take them all together, there's going to be a spectrum of testimony, you know, from those with not very much testimony or very little experience in the church, those that have strong testimonies, some who really understand the importance of temples and those that don't. And then, of course, you always have the enemies of the church that are going to criticize these type of things. Okay, later on, why so many temples? Our predecessors have prophesied that temples will dot the landscape of North and South America, the isles of the Pacific, Europe, and elsewhere, President Ezra Taft Benson said several decades ago. Quote, if this redemptive work is to be done on the scale it must be, hundreds of temples will be needed, end quote. President Russell M. Nelson said we are building temples at an unprecedented pace today, quote, because the Lord has instructed us to do so. Right? So this is the pattern being shown, because the Lord has instructed us to do so. The blessings of the temple help to gather Israel on both sides of the veil. These blessings also help to prepare a people who will help prepare the world for the second coming of the Lord, end quote. In his dedicatory prayer of the Kirtland Temple, Joseph Smith prayed that all people who shall enter upon the threshold of the Lord's house may feel thy power. And we ask thee, Holy Father, that thy servants may go forth from this house armed with thy power, and that thy name may be upon them, and thy glory round about them, and thine angels have charge over them. When I read those verses, I think of Nephi's vision of the latter days. Note the similar wording. And it came to pass that I, Nephi, beheld the power of the Lamb of God, that it descended upon the saints of the church of the Lamb, and upon the covenant people of the Lord, who were scattered upon all the face of the earth. And they were armed with righteousness and with the power of God in great glory. From 1 Nephi 14:14. I believe that Latter-day Temples play an essential role in the fulfillment of Nephi's prophecy and are central to the protection and power promised to the faithful before the second coming. And then I'm not going to read this part. I already read it in that other video. But one of these bullet points is prepare against the day of burning and the calamity of the wicked. Of course, that's a reference to the second coming. So, yes, you can say for sure that he's addressing all the temples that are being built. But I think that there's going to be other things too. Because think about some people's attitude if they find out that a lot of money is spent to purchase the auditorium and Community of Christ temple. There's already so many people that mumble and grumble when they think about prophecy, even just the idea of the second coming in general. There's people that just want to put it out of their minds. And so they would think that it's just absolutely ridiculous if the church was to purchase property in Independence, Missouri, and move forward with the plans to build that 24 temple complex, right? So anyway, it's just interesting. You have this symbol of what happened last year with the transfer of property, and it's brought up a number of times in the Liahona, but there's more to think about. Let's go to this. This is my spreadsheet called Quotes A through Z. Row 543 for City of Seth. So the City of Seth, in case you're new or you didn't watch any of my videos about it, there were essentially 4 what you would call like cities of Zion during the Missouri period. A city of Zion essentially was like an official settlement, like a city that was designated by the prophet Joseph Smith that was going to have a temple. Okay, there's 4 of them. Let me just read this. This comes from the David O. McKay Diaries on the University of Virginia's website for Mormon studies. This is an entry from October 6th, 1969. And this is a supplement from President Alvin R. Dyer, counselor in the first presidency. He was tasked to do certain things with the sacred lands here in Missouri, like to purchase land and to build the Independence Visitor Center and beautify Far West. Okay, so let me read this part right here. All were present at the meeting. I placed into their hands a digest of a number of revelations with certain comments, which was titled, "If by purchase, behold, you're blessed." Of course, referring to purchasing land in Missouri. I read to these brethren segments of the minutes and of the meetings of the first presidency, particularly the meetings held with President McKay, wherein he had given direction that such a committee be formed for the purpose intended. I explained to the brethren present that this work would need to go forward slowly, but yet methodically, to accomplish the purpose of obtaining properties in the Missouri area, centered around 4 particular areas where land had been consecrated and dedicated for the building of temples and a city of Zion. These included the following locations: Independence, Missouri, Jackson County; Far West, Missouri, Caldwell County; Adam-ondi-Ahman, Daviess County; and the 4th location being approximately on the border of Caldwell and Daviess counties and a direct line between Adam-ondi-Ahman and Far West, where the prophet had dedicated the land to be a city of the Zion of God. And we learn from other sources, namely this letter from Albert Perry Rockwood, that it was supposed to be called the City of Seth, right here. City of Seth. You can also find it in this church news article that was published August 30th of 2003. He was talking about President Spencer W. Kimball's trip to Missouri in 1978. And while he was there, he went to go see the church sites. And it says, an added bonus was visiting the area believed to have been the location of the city of Seth, designated by the prophet Joseph Smith as a place of refuge for the saints. Okay, so the church is specifically interested in Independence, Missouri, specifically the temple land for the 24 temple complex, Adam-ondi-Ahman, and this is where the temple would have been built. It seems like most people think that it would have been right here where this marker is at, but there is another location. But I think it would be here at marker number 10. It's on Spring Hill. Far West, and then this is approximately where the city of Seth would have been. I read a book called Sacred Places, Missouri, and it led me to this area. So probably somewhere around here. Okay. So that is the plan, to build those cities, to build those temples. And what's interesting is that if we go to my spreadsheet called Timeline, what is this? Timeline Phrases, we notice a little bit of chatter, as I would call it, in General Conference ahead of the purchase of the Kirtland Temple. So if you're new to the channel, using BYU's Scripture Citation Index, which allows you to search the scriptures as well as General Conference talks, you can search for words and phrases. And I've taken the number of General Conference talks by year that include these words and phrases. We recently covered the fact that talks began for the purchase of the Kirtland Temple in 2021. Okay, so I searched for these terms: Ohio, Kirtland Temple, Kirtland, and in 2020, there was a spike in talk about Kirtland Temple in Ohio. When you compare it to previous years down here, there's a sudden spike the year before 2021. And then also just a higher frequency from the year 2020 until present, 2025. Just look at the darker colors. That's all you need to do. You can see that there are darker colors right here compared to down here. Now, you see the same thing with Missouri. It's the same thing with Missouri. Look at Jackson County. So Jackson County, there's this big space of time between 1999 and 2015 where you don't hear Jackson County at all in General Conference. And then you start to see some. 2016, 2018, President Nelson's first year as president of the church. 2020, of course. And then 2024. But interestingly, in 2024, you also have Far West. And we haven't heard of Far West. We haven't heard anything about Far West since 2012. So there's another spike around this period of time. Not just for Kirtland and the Kirtland Temple, but Missouri, Jackson County, Far West. So I have to wonder if maybe there have been talks. And if there have been, like, let's say that they were going to announce something this year, or say that they were going to announce it early next year or something like that. If it's the same as the Kirtland Temple, then talks have probably been ongoing for a while. Maybe this would be all part of the plan, or part of like I suggested before, this could be part of like a multi-phase thing where you don't just transfer everything at once. You do it in phases, or it's a thing where it's like, okay, for right now, we'll buy the Kirtland Temple for sure. And then we can talk later about the temple and auditorium and whatever. And so time goes by, Community of Christ reassesses their situation, and then maybe they think up, maybe they have like ideas like, okay, yeah, what we'll fix all this stuff up, because by the way, they've been fixing up the auditorium. They've been fixing up the temple. I've documented that. We'll fix it up, get it ready for sale. And actually I think we do want to sell it now because we just want to start pivoting this other direction. We have some other big plans, big new initiatives that we want to launch into. So actually, yeah, let's just go ahead and do it now. And so it could be something like that. All I know for sure is the way that they were talking in these videos strongly suggested that something is in the future for the church. What they were saying could be applied to the personal level, but I feel like it could also be applied to the church level. And I think that was the purpose, because let me just highlight a few things really quick. And by the way, you can access this anytime. The link is in the description box of each video for my spreadsheets. But I was stunned by this one. This is from Mareva Arnaud Chong, the presiding evangelist, and she was the former president of the Council of the 12 Apostles for a time. I just want to let's read this first part. I remember being on a mission trip. On the road, we got stuck in a huge traffic jam. Cars were at a complete standstill. So think about her talking about the church. Like the mission trip is the church itself. And suddenly there's these financial problems and things are coming to a standstill. Think about it that way, if this is what the analogy is actually about. From a distance, we could see dust, barriers, noisy machines, workers in action, a lot of movement, a lot of noise. But for us, no way forward. Then, almost at the level of the construction site, a worker lifted a sign, detour. And right there, just beside us, a small road opened up, narrower, less visible, almost hidden, but real. Now think about that. Think about if you've been to Independence, the downtown area in the Community of Christ area, they're like right next to each other. And the Community of Christ Temple kind of dominates the skyline. When you look that way, it's pretty prominent. And so is the auditorium, especially at nighttime. Okay. So for a while now, ever since those buildings have been constructed, they've been pretty visible, right? And I'm assuming their membership was probably more robust than it is now in terms of numbers, maybe. I don't know if like they're losing members, but she says a small road opened up, narrower, less visible, which is what would happen if they sell their properties, less visible, almost hidden, but real. And it was the road that allowed us to move on. The scene has stayed with me because life is often like that. We stare at the obstacle, we feel the dust, we hear the noise, and we think everything is closed. But God invites us to imagine beyond what we see, to trust that there is already a road waiting to open. Now look at this next paragraph. This one is almost just blatant. The prophet Isaiah spoke to a people in exile in Babylon. Their temple was destroyed. Their land lost. Their habits broken. They thought, our story is over. And that's when God speaks. See, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? And then she goes on and kind of repeats these themes. I want to highlight this. Friends, God is not calling us to stay stuck at the construction site. So it's almost like, if the church's original plans had come to fruition, back before they became Community of Christ, back when they did actually intend to somehow get hold of the temple lot and build that temple, right? The more traditionalists, I believe, still believe that. And definitely those that split away from Community of Christ, the restoration branches, from the ones that I've talked to, they still believe that. So think of hearing it from their point of view. Friends, God is not calling us to stay stuck at the construction site of our fears. God is calling us to move, to imagine beyond, to step into the unknown with trust. So there's a lot of stuff like that in Stacy D. Cram's video message too. It was very similar. Pivoting, being reborn, changing, prophetic imagination, and agility. So yeah. So I don't know. These are my thoughts. These are my observations. I think it's interesting that you have this message come out after this message was put out in the Liahona. Both seemingly about big things to come. In this case, with the Liahona, it seems a lot more hopeful because he talks about flourishing. Whereas over here, although they're not talking explicitly about the state of the church, it's more about, oh, things are over. Things look bleak. What are we going to do? It's like completely opposite. It's like completely opposite. So I don't know. You be the judge or don't be the judge. Let's just watch and just see what happens. But I guess I'm just not going to be surprised if that's what we see soon. So, okay, well, that's going to be it for this one. I'll talk to you guys later.